Okay, hey, we're welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have the full review for you of a watch that I recently previewed, the Zodiac Limited Edition Super Seawolf World Time. Now, a little bit about the brand. Zodiac was established back in 1882. They're Swiss made and they're essentially kind of a heritage revival brand, really focusing on vintage inspired designs from their very iconic parts catalog. And this particular model, of course, is a traveler's watch. Some key common characteristics and design language. When you're looking for a traveler's watch, of course, you're going to want that GMT or world timer function. So you're able to track multiple time zones with relative ease. Now, this particular model is also a dive watch. Some key common characteristics and design language for divers are, of course, water resistance through some type of screw down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, something that's legible with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet. Now, this model actually recalls their vintage 1970s Super Seawolf models, but more modernized and sized up to 40 millimeters versus the original 36 millimeters. It is currently available for $17.95 direct from Zodiac. So with all of that said, guys, this thing is pretty cool. I really appreciate those of you who checked out the kind of unboxing experience with me, but I've been wearing this piece for a while now, and I have to say I'm really enjoying it. So I'm looking forward to kind of sharing my full review with you guys. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, so this thing is obviously quite a stunner. It's very handsome. Color combination, color play is very nice, and I think it has a lot of great visual interest. Even if you kind of look at it at a glance, it just has those 70s vibes. And then the nice thing is it's not just frivolous design. It's actually quite functional in terms of its job as a world time model. Now, in terms of the general dimensions, it's 40 millimeters across by 13.3 millimeters thick, and it's 47.6 millimeters lug to lug. It's made out of full 316L stainless steel, and yeah, I'm digging it. The crystal is sapphire, and it is domed with inner air coating, and you can see that it does have a double dome because you're getting a lot less distortion. It does have that kind of boxed edge there, which is very nice, but you can see even at very harsh angles, still rather legible, which I can appreciate. The bezel is actually really awesome. So a lot of the times when you buy a GMT watch that has been converted from a dive watch, what ends up happening is you compromise because the bezel ends up being just a 60 or 120 click unidirectional bezel. This is a bidirectional bezel with 24 clicks. And man, it just does the job, which is great. It's not one that you really spin fast, so I don't know if spinning it quickly is really going to give you the experience that you're looking for, but I dig it. It's really nice action, very solid, very dialed in. So amazing experience from that standpoint in terms of this bezel action. Even with the gloves, I'm still able to turn, although I will say that because of the grip here, it's not the grippiest, so it is giving me a little trouble with the gloves, but still totally doable from that standpoint. This bezel insert, if some of you are wondering, I'm gonna guess it's a mineral, a K1 mineral, because that's what the diver version has, which isn't a bad deal because honestly it's going to be, although slightly less scratch resistant, it's going to be a lot more shatter resistant, and because of the location there, you're not going to want that, if this bangs into something, you're not going to want it to shatter. So I can give them that. Some of you might just see that as kind of a shortcut or something like that, but these types of things used to be done in acrylics and whatnot, and this is of course a very the vintage inspired piece, so I'll definitely give them a pass from that standpoint. Now the crown is screw down and signed, as you can see there. Quite lovely. And then inside, although you can't see it, is a Swiss-made automatic Soprod C-125 movement. Now, what is that movement? I couldn't tell you what it looks like, but it is a 4 hertz movement with a 42-hour power reserve and 25 joules. It has hacking and hand winding and an independent 24-hour hand. So that means when you do pull out the crown to the first position, one direction is going to adjust the date, the other direction is going to adjust that 24-hour hand. So not a quote-unquote true GMT, but it is absolutely a very standard GMT from that standpoint. Now, the case back, as you guys saw, is solid and etched. Not too much to write home about from that standpoint, but it does honestly sit really well on the wrist, so I can appreciate that. And then when we just get down to the details of what makes this thing look so darn good, let's take a look at it, guys. We got that gray sunray dial. We have, of course, the nice brushing on the hour and minute hands, and then that nice polished seconds hand, as well as that very nicely done kind of matchstick style red GMT hand, which is beautiful. You also do have applied indices and then Superluminova C3. This is also 200 meters water resistant as well, or if you want to measure it as 20 atmospheres, that works as well. The lugs are 20 millimeters, which is great to have a nice even number. The end links are solid, and they do have quick release spring bars built in, which I can appreciate. And of course, it does have this kind of rivet style bracelet, which is quite period correct. Again, it's rivet style. They're not actually riveted together or anything like that. But in terms of the connecting system, you're going to have pins and collars linking everything together. And then you do have this very nicely done 18 millimeter milled and signed folding flip lock clasp with 4 micro adjustment positions. Manual micro adjustment, but it's still there nonetheless, so I can appreciate that as well. So yeah, this thing is handsome. Let's actually get it on the wrist now and see how it wears. All right, guys, as you can see on my 7 1/4 inch wrist, this thing wears really, really well. Just about perfect, just like the regular Super Seawolf. It just sits really nicely on the wrist. You can see that, quite thin in visual weight and appearance. And even when I get up close here and there's some lens distortion, it looks a little bit bigger, but it doesn't look oversized or anything like that. And then, of course, with a little bit more perspective, I think it looks absolutely fantastic on my 7 1/4 inch wrist. It's very smooth, well done, and honestly super versatile. The gray kind of goes with everything. The black and the white and the red accents, it all just comes together. And of course, you do have this great kind of backdrop, which does break down all of the different time zones, which is pretty cool. And in terms of the feature set here, instead of a rotating 24-hour bezel, here you actually do get the world time feature, which means that you're actually going to see each time zone. You still can track based off of the inner chapter ring, which is a 24-hour scale. But what I decided to do was actually set the 24-hour hand to match my hour hand, but just in, of course, 24-hour increments. So here you're going to see it's a little bit past 9 a.m. It's about 9:20 on the watch anyway. And then you'll see that being reflected here almost, not quite at 10 p.m. on this side, right? So I'm sorry, 10 a.m. and as it goes around to 10 p.m. would be up here. So anyways, that's the nice thing. And then of course, since I lined up Los Angeles with the hour hand, I would know that New York would be ahead right here, which is quite cool. So I think that's very nice. Of course, you're going to have to kind of learn for yourself. You can also just track a secondary time zone. I could have set the 24-hour hand to just always be on New York time, and then I wouldn't have to essentially even use this. I would just know that whatever is set on that 24-hour hand would be that one time zone. The reason why I set it like this is because then it allows me to use the entire bezel a little bit easier for me to calculate other time zones, because all I have to do is put Los Angeles wherever the GMT hand is sitting, and then I'll know essentially every time zone for every other area, because I'll just have to match up now where their name is and then where the hour mark is. So very, very easy. And of course the hour mark based off of the 24-hour chaptering. So very, very cool and quite useful. But let's go ahead and get this piece off the wrist and actually work out some low light transition, loom shots, and closing thoughts. All right, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, quite clean on the loom front. Again, although this originated as a diver, it is not a dedicated diver anymore. So having any type of loom pip or anything on the bezel would not necessarily make sense, because it's a world time bezel. So the nice thing though is that you still have generally good orientation in terms of figuring out what time it is. You don't get the carnal reference of knowing where 12 o'clock is. But of course, if it's on your wrist, it should be pretty easy for you to tell the time. But one thing I actually like to work in, apart from just loom shots, are getting in some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of the times you can be coming in and out of a building, walking underneath an overhang, maybe even spending some time under the shade of a tree, or just spending some time in your favorite automobile. So I like to kind of figure out what this watch will look like, and any watch I review, under less than optimal lighting, even getting into some harsh lighting situations here where typically this would expose any imperfections in that finishing. And you can see the brushing is actually still quite uniform and quite deeply brushed. So really nice from that standpoint. And that dial is just coming to life, guys. Look at that thing. Looks fantastic. Very, very nice. I love that there are kind of varying layers of reflection, because you do have, of course, that reflective insert there on the bezel, plus you have your dial casting some reflection, the crystal getting some reflections, and it's like not overly blingy or anything like that, but it just plays with the light really well, guys. Look at the way that light glides over that sunray dial. Really quite fantastic. So let's go ahead and hit the lights, get it back going, guys. Closing thoughts here. Classic proportions, wears really just perfectly on the wrist. Great balance of versatility and visual interest. In terms of model variations, there's also a red bezel version with a pale silver dial. So pretty cool that this one is more of a dark gray dial, but instead you can also get a pale silver option with, again, that bright red, which seems to be pretty popular these days. In terms of comparable models, guys, there are a lot of other Swiss-made GMTs out there, but I'd say not as many with that world time complication in general versus GMT complications. So you're already kind of ahead of the game from that perspective. And then when it comes to the bottom line, I just really love the blend of feeling special, but also being really wearable and versatile. So it definitely is a special watch, but it's not too shouty. It's actually quite toned down, and at a glance it's just retro. And then you start looking at it, and then you kind of see it for its functionality, and it's like, oh wow, this is actually just very, very useful and super handsome. It'd be like finding out that your favorite commute car also could go 200 miles an hour. So I think that's the cool thing, is that it has a great look at face value and at a glance, but then it's also quite functional. And then the kind of color play and balance within the aesthetic for all of the words and the and just the general layout, like everything has a functional purpose, but it's also just darn good looking. So I feel that, and I can appreciate it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.